All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to join us again today. I hope you've been enjoying the virtual field trips as much as we have, especially on a dreary, kind of chilly spring day. At least they tell us it's spring. So today for you, we have a virtual field trip to the Honey Hollow Environmental Education Center, which is the home base for the Bucks County Audubon Society. We are super lucky to have Stacy Carpool, the executive director, and Robert Timmons with us, the environmental educator for Bucks County Audubon Society. So it's going to be a great day. Just a few little bits of welcome from us. Today, as I mentioned, we've got the Honey Hollow trip. Next week, we've got a migration field trip along the Kittatinny Ridge with some of our Audubon, Pennsylvania staff. And the following week, we've got Eli DeParks leading a field trip to the Trout Run Nature Preserve, which is owned and protected by the Appalachian Audubon Society. If you're looking to sign up for either of those, all of our field trips are at pa.audubon.org/events. And if you miss any along the way, you can see the link here. If you just go to pa.audubon.org and click on our chapters and centers link at the top, scroll down and you'll have a link to all of the recordings of the virtual field trips. It takes us about a day or so to get them up and live, but then they're up and you can watch them again, you can share them, whatever you like. Just a few reminders. Since we have about 50 folks on the call already, all microphones are muted. If yours has become unmuted, you can just hover over the mute button in the left-hand corner on the toolbar, and it'll let you toggle in between the mute and the off mute. The chat box is great for questions. Robert and Stacy are going to monitor that the whole time today, so if you have questions while they're talking, feel free to drop them into the chat box. And if you'd like to turn off your camera, especially if your internet connection is a little bit on the temperamental side, you can turn off your camera in that same location that you found the mute button. So you can toggle it on or off, and that'll make your connection a little stronger. We'll also have time for questions at the end, but right now, we are gonna kick it off. And as you're watching these and watching through the recordings, if you and your chapter would like to host a field trip, we would love to have you. We've got dates available in June that we're scheduling out for, and there's just tons and tons of things that people would be interested in hearing about. So if you have an idea, my email's there on the screen. You can just reach out and get in touch. But right now, I'm going to turn the remote over to Bucks County Audubon Society and let them take it from here. So Robert and Stacy, the screen is yours.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kelly. So this is Stacy Carpool. I'm the executive director with Bucks County Audubon Society. And as Kelly mentioned, we are housed and run the Honey Hollow Environmental Education Center. The whole education center is about 110 acres. We're obviously in Bucks County in Solebury, near New Hope. And we own part of the property, and we also have part of the property that is private property that we can use for education programs. So it's a really wonderful partnership that we have to be able to do education programs. Robert, if you want to pass the screen on one more.
Yeah, that's what I just.
I gave Robert control of the PowerPoint, so because he's going to do most of the talking.
There. Oh.
Oops. Well, I'm just going to talk while he does that. So a couple quick things about Bucks County Audubon Society. We were actually founded in 1969 at Del Valle University by a wonderful group of environmentalists who really wanted to do some really great things for the environment. They wanted to educate people. They wanted to have an impact. So, education, advocacy has really been a major part of what we do for the last 50 years. Over the years, we've done some really interesting things. We actually partnered in the 80s with another organization and joined forces, which brought us the Honey Hollow Environmental Education Center because we merged with the Honey Hollow Watershed Association. And that gave us sort of a home base to be able to be at and do a lot of our programs. So what we really try and do is get people out to our site. We want to get people in nature, connected to nature, understanding the science of it, so that hopefully that's going to lead people to making really informed decisions about how they act towards the earth. So that's really sort of what we do in a nutshell. some really great things. We're part of Honey Hollow Watershed, which is actually a National Historic Landmark. People banded together to do some really, really cool stuff in like the 1930s. There were farmers in the area and they realized, wait a minute, we're the way we're doing things is having a bad impact on the land and a bad impact on the water. So we need to do things differently. So they work with the Army Corps of Engineers, the conservation districts, and all of that to really come up with some really wonderful sustainable agriculture practices. And many of them are still the practices we use today if we're really doing good sustainable agriculture. So the whole area is a National Historic Landmark with a lot of preserved properties as well. So we have a lot of really wonderful sort of natural open space right around us. So I think that's my little pitch. I'm going to turn it over to Robert to give you a tour of our property, hit some of the beautiful highlights, and hopefully everybody enjoys.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Robert Timmons, environmental educator with Bucks County Audubon. And we're going to take a little walk around our property here today. We have roughly 6 to 7 miles worth of trails. Most, you can see the pointer here, they're in this area. That's what we have that's open to the public. Most of our trails are open to the public dawn to dusk. We do have, as Stacy mentioned, we still share some of the property with our neighbors to the west. And we use that property for educational purposes. Let's see here. So most of the area for education, we do things with school groups, things like that. They use that. Let's move on. As Stacy said, we are located just outside of New Hope. We are in the, there we go. Let's work our way up the drive into our building. So our building is interesting. As you can see, it was at one time a barn. In the 1930s, when it was built, it belonged to a larger farm that was about 500 acres. This building was a barn that housed horses and later stored hay and equipment. We obtained the property in the mid-90s. It was purchased from Pico Energy. And it was nice that it was right next door to the property that we were already using, because now that doubled the space that we had to use. In 95, we started doing renovations on the barn, making it a suitable headquarters and education facility. For the 90s, it's very environmentally friendly. All of our heating is through radiant heating in the floor. Our walls are insulated with recycled materials. We use recycled newspapers and denim, and hay is what we use for that. One of the main focuses for Bucks County Audubon Society is environmental education. We do a lot of work with local schools, all throughout Bucks County, schools, organizations. We outreach. We do as much as we can to bring quality environmental education to the people of Bucks County and beyond. We work with schools from preschool right up into 12th grade. We do different programs for everything from in-school programs to field trips to, well, in this day and age now where we're all stuck at home, we're trying to come up with lesson plans that schools can use. So we really work a lot with that. You see our Director of Education, Diane Smith, with some kids in the woods. We also do a lot of family events and programs. Here you see some photos from our Hello and Farewell to Summer campfires. Those are just two of the things that we like to do. We have an Earth Day festival. One of our favorite and most popular events is our Haunted Trails event in the fall, where we kind of put a twist on the haunted aspect of Halloween. And what we do is we have one day where families can come and decorate jack-o'-lanterns, and that's usually on a Wednesday. And then by Friday evening, we put all of the jack-o'-lanterns on our trails and lined our trails with jack-o'-lanterns. Then families can take a evening stroll through the woods, you know, in this really neat atmosphere where everything is kind of lit up. And along the way, we have different environmental educators in costumes of some of the creatures, animals and things that live in our woods. Everything from raccoons to bats to even plants like multiflora rose and things like that. Just so we can include education in part of the fun. And at each stop, instead of having a spook there to greet our guests, we have a station where there's some education that's going on. It's a lot of fun. We do a lot of adult programming as well, everything from bird walks to lectures, adult programming in homes. We also do, we've done birding trips and some other things too that we might touch on along our journey here. We're doing a lot now with citizen science, things with Climate Watch. Right now we're doing we're getting ready to do pollinator surveys. In the past, as you see here, we've done monarch tagging, where we've scouted out where there are cocoons that are hanging about, and we keep an eye on them. And as the adult monarch emerges, we carefully have captured them and tagged them. Right now, we're doing bluebird nest box monitoring. We are working with Nest Watch. And we have a handful of volunteers that are checking about 50 or so nest boxes that are on our property. That's been an exciting thing to be a part of. Let's head out for a walk. Let's see what we have on our trails here. We'll head up. If you were to head up, the first place you would stop would be along our white trail. And there we have our bird blind. It's a nice spot. We've got some feeders on the other side there. I didn't get any pictures of that right now. The bird blind is under a bit of renovation. We have a Eagle Scout. Oh, one thing I did want to mention too is one of the things that we do a lot of work with as well are scout groups. Everything from having campouts to, in this case, we have an Eagle Scout who is working on a badge, and they have been working on putting a deer exclosure in around our bird blind there. That way we can keep our feeders full of seeds for the birds and not so much for the deer and raccoons and everybody else that wants to hang around. So he's been working on that. So we have that going on. So I don't have any other pictures of that, but it is a very nice stop. So if you're ever visiting, please stop in and check it out. Who knows what you'll see. So now we move up our trail a bit. And this is one of my favorite times of year on the property. I love just how green it suddenly gets. The property is not the biggest, but it just seems to have so much personality, so much depth. It's really just a wonderful place to explore. Our mayflowers are all working on popping up, as our trout lilies and ferns have all started coming up over the last few weeks. As we move on, we make our way to our boulder crossing. Now, this is one of the most popular places on our trails. It's just a wonderful place. Absolutely love this area right here. Kids love it. Families spend a lot of time here. It is a gorgeous area. See, there we are. We're moving forward. This is just looking north, right from the center of that crossing there. And this area right here is wonderful. This is where we do a lot of our education programming, right here from the banks of the stream. When we have school groups here, we'll come and we'll fish things out from under the rocks all along. There's just a bevy of life right here. Everything from salamanders to microinvertebrates, frogs, snakes, you name it, we can find it here. It is a wonderful, wonderful spot. Also, we have it's summer camps. And this is a great place where the kids like to spend the afternoons after we do our summer camp activities in the mornings and the afternoons after lunch. We'll come here and we'll spend a good part of the day here just keeping cool. This one open spot too is a great spot. Our tradition is on the final day of the of camp, we have homemade boat races. Miss Diane, our lead educator, she just really loves that spot a lot, and there's nothing better than having kids here in this spot of the stream. They love it. They've learned to take care of it. They appreciate it. They appreciate the things that we find. Here you see some kids and an educator. They're looking for something. They've got something under that rock there. Check out what they found. Beautiful red salamander. We don't find a lot of these. These are somewhat rare for us. They're a treat. We find all sorts of salamanders, mostly redback or two-line, maybe some dusky, but every once in a while we'll find a couple of these. These guys are a real treat to find. They're a lot bigger. They're a little more secretive when we find them. The kids love it. Now, parents love hearing about the great times their kids have. They come back and we get tons of wonderful feedback from them, and they talk about, you know, how our children, they've taken us up to the woods afterwards. They just want to show us everything that they got to do for the day, and I wish I could be a kid and get to do that all over again as well. So last year we came up with some ideas to get parents out and get to do it, and one of those was cocktails by the creek. BYOB type event where parents could come out and they could just relax in the stream just like their kids do, and get some education while they're at it. While we did that, we did the same. They got to do the same things that their kids did. They got to turn over rocks and find out what was living underneath. They got to learn about the things that they found, and just got to spend a nice evening in the forest. Yes, I do believe those are American toads. And moving on up, you see some of our beautiful rock-colored, moss-covered rocks. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous area. This is moving up our white trail just parallel to all the different falls and everything. Right here is a favorite spot of visitors and staff alike. We love this rock. This rock is huge. The kids call it salamander rock. Its head's kind of salamander shaped. This is a fun place just to sit and listen. You know, the falls are here. The water rushing over the rocks here is really nice. In this area down here just below the rock, a few years ago after a pretty heavy storm where the water came through, it really pulled that area out. And it's deep enough for the kids to kind of float and even jump into. So it's a pretty popular spot there with our campers and guests. The kids actually call that Cannonball Creek, that spot, and that's a spot where they can somewhat jump into. Another one of our scout projects, this was a bridge that was built over our stream a few years back. It takes us further up the White Trail. This is at the top of one of the hills as we reach up toward the top. Now you look at it and you might think there's not anything there. It just looks like kind of a clearing on a hill, but on closer inspection, we find that there are things living there. Well, at least something visiting for the day, I guess. This is a spot that the kids on in our camps love. They call it Fairy Hollow. We brought the kids up here for years when we do some nature projects, and this gives them a chance to build fairy houses or toad homes, depending on what the kid is more interested in. You know, some children like to have fantasy and make there be fairies. The other kids, they like to catch toads and build homes for toads hang around. So we come up here, we bring kids up a couple times during camp, and they get to build all sorts of different neat structures. Some kids are really pretty talented in the things that they build. You know, there's a young lady catching a toad there. Now I got to say, we have some wonderful things with our education and with the camps. I mean, I can't talk about how successful they are. I can't say enough how great they are. This girl right here, she actually comes all the way from Richmond, Virginia to come to our camps, which is pretty nice. She has grandparents in our area, but she came once, and she's been, I think, for the last 3 years coming back each year. So that really is something that makes us happy. Moving further up, ticks, we do have we see our fair share of ticks. There's not much avoiding them when we're in the woods, especially as full of deer as our woods are. We offer, each of us has our different thing that we use. We use different botanical sprays to help keep ticks off of our bodies, and things like that. Here is a section of double bridge at the top of our white trail. This is almost at the beginning of Honey Hollow Creek. And this is another place that is one of our favorite places for education. It's filled with rocks and places for kids to explore and get into. These waters, I can't say how clean they are. We have so much life that's inside of those. This was a lucky day. We had a handful of salamanders, and on this day, we even got to catch 2 reds. And these guys can get pretty big too. They're pretty neat. They can get to be 6-7 inches long. They're a good sized salamander there. You can see we even caught ourselves a dragonfly nymph, which is pretty unusual to catch in the stream. Usually we find those in the marshes and ponds where the water is a bit more still, and they don't seem to like the moving water as much. That was a good day. So we'll move up the white trail some more. Now we're almost to the top of the hill. And here you can see that there are a few more structures that have been built. These are built by campers who attend our survival camp. Every July, last week of, we have a survival camp. It started a few years ago where we just teach children light survival techniques. Diane and I will take the kids up to the top of the woods and just have a make-believe scenario where we say, we've just landed in a survival situation. What do we do? And we teach the basic concepts. The first thing, needing shelter, water, food. And throughout the week, we touch on these subjects in a fun way. And you can see the kids really get into it. They build some very, very good, sturdy structures, big enough usually for a few of them to fit into and have some fun with for a bit. Here we have a A-frame that was built from a tree that had fallen down. Kids stacked up. We teach them everything from finding clean water, even building fire and starting fire from flint and steel. And we make believe that we are using things that we may have found from, in the wild or crash sites like mirrors and things to help start fires. All right, and here we are. We are at the top of the White Trail, and this is in our north agricultural field. These fields are kind of a buffer. They lay between our property and the property that we use next door to us. They are kept up by the Carversville Farmers Foundation. Is that right, Stacy? That's who keeps those up? Anyway, they get kept up each year. Different things will get planted in just to maintain the quality of the soil. And these are the fields that Stacy was talking about in the beginning, where in the early 30s and 40s when farmers started to really work on soil conservation, that this is stuff that these are the fields she was talking about from that. Off in the distance, the mountains and the difference there, in the distance there rather, that's New Jersey. So we're right on the border of Pennsylvania, New Jersey. The Delaware River Valley is right in there. And you can just barely see right there some buildings. That's Lambertville, New Jersey. right across the way there. This is one of my favorite spots. It's just a nice open area, and when the sky is blue and it's spring like it is right now and the green is setting in, they're just two wonderful colors to see together. And it's a great spot to look at through all the seasons of the year. I mean, this is almost the same, taken from the same place, clearly at just different times. Just stunning land. So now we'll move back into the woods. This is moving toward our pond on the pond trail. Now we're back on the southern half of our property. We've moved down from the upper fields. Now we're down getting close to our pond, which is on the south side of our property. And we are back to crossing over Honey Hollow Creek. This is another bridge that was a scout project a few years ago. And you got to keep your eyes open on our trails because you never know who's going to be following you. I had this guy here following me along a few months back. I spooked him in the morning, and he was curled up next to the edge of the trail. And we had our moment where we kind of looked at each other a bit. And as I walked along, I turned around and he was still behind me, following me. I got to the end of the trail and he was still right there sniffing at me, wondering what I was up to. I was just as curious about him. We have a couple really interesting historical buildings on our property. Right here is from back when the farm was operational. This is an old spring house. It was built in the same time period as the barn. This is another fun place to bring kids. You know, a lot of kids today, they don't get to see buildings like this anymore. So we would take them in and talk to them and show them how it was nature's refrigerator in a way, how show that the temperature was cooler and talk about the uses of it and the time that these were used. It was a cool place to visit too, because inside it was dark and cold and there were all kinds of things that we could find in there, different frogs, salamanders, some tracks of animals like raccoons that have sneaked in the night. A sad thing about this building, though, is it got whacked by a fallen tree. We had a pretty good windstorm come through a few months ago, and a tree did fall right across that brand new roof. It's a real, even the occasional garter snake we could find in there. You never knew what we would find when we would go inside of there. There was always something. It was always a fun spot to visit. Another building we have, and this building is interesting, and the story behind it is pretty interesting as well. We have a water wheel. Not many places can boast that. It's a neat place to visit, our water wheel. Now, the interesting thing about it is the gentleman who built the farm, he had a bit of a fear of fire. You know, back in the 30s, I'm sure that it was hard to get any kind of help, assistance if there was a fire, being that we are, you know, outside of town, and I'm not sure what the fire department was like at that time. You know, getting them out there was probably dirt roads. It might not have been the easiest thing. So the farmer, he installed this wheelhouse and added, oh, I went the wrong way. Now I went too far. Anyway, he installed the wheelhouse, and what that does is that fuels, that pumps water to several fire hydrants that are located throughout the property. One of those in the picture was right there, that was at our visitor center. We have another one that's further along our property, and then properties that don't belong to us anymore that are adjacent. They even have some over there, and it was interesting because not long ago, we had someone from one of those properties visiting, and they had no idea why they had the fire hydrant on their land. But that was why. The farmer was worried about fires on the property. He added the fire hydrants and the water wheel. The water wheel was fed by a pond that had been upstream that he had built. If ever there was a fire, all he had to do was pull the lever. The water wheel would start pumping the water, and gravity would take over and get water where it needed to be. Our water wheel has not been operational for some time. And I believe back in the late 90s or early 2000s, one of the hurricanes that came through our area washed out the pond that fed that. Now, as you can see, vultures have taken a liking to the wheel, and above the water wheel, for a few times over the last couple years, they've made nests there. And this is a pair that was there last year. This is them probably mid-August or so, so they haven't been out of the nest for too long. They hung out for a while, even hung out around the docks that we have on our pond. They were funny to watch. I didn't know that they're black vultures. Black vultures. I didn't know that vultures had personalities, but they actually were pretty comical, especially out here on the dock when they were hanging out one day. I walked to the dock and there was one each on either end of this bench here. And one of our flotation devices, they were playing with it. They were tossing it around to each other. I got a kick out of that. That was pretty funny. But this is one view of our pond. It's a nice sized pond, not very deep. Our deepest I think it gets is on this corner here, is maybe about 9 feet deep. The rest of the pond is usually about waist to knee deep. Not very deep. Fairly shallow. We have a lot of life in it. There's fish, mostly bass and bluegill, a lot of turtles, a lot of painted turtles, a couple really nice sized snapping turtles. My son was out checking it out the other day, and he said that there was a really big one that was moving around. They're always fun to watch. And this, as I said, education is one of our main focuses. This is a great place for us to do that. We bring a lot of school groups here to our pond, where we do a lot of dipping and finding out what's living inside. And the kids find all sorts of things. Again, a lot of macroinvertebrates, things living in the mud, damselfly nymphs, dragonflies, tadpoles, all sorts of things are in here. Here's another great view of it. Here we have one of our benches that's there and around, and a lone mallard that's swimming. Here's an alternate view from the other side of the pond looking at our docks in the fall. And with a pond, we get all kinds of life. So much, anytime you walk down there, you can almost be guaranteed to find something interesting. This is from a few years back. My daughter and I had taken a walk down and around. And on the way back up, we happened upon this lady who was steady laying eggs right in the middle of the trail. We sat and watched her for a little bit, and then left her about her business. She was steady laying eggs. While we were watching, she probably laid 5 or 6 just in a few minutes. Yes, absolutely, painted turtle. Move along. Here's a great frog that's almost there that someone found last year. And again, a lot of the kids that we see, this is something that's regular for them. They don't get outside as much. We do get some kids that are from closer to Philadelphia. We do a program, a watersheds program with kids in the Philly suburbs. And a lot of times they come up and they're convinced, that we have bears or even tigers in our woods. It's surprising some of the questions that they ask us, what is here? And when they come in, we have all sorts of things to find them. And some of these kids didn't know that things existed the way that they do. Some kids, it's just mind blowing to them. And that's always a treat to be a part of that, to show them the wonderful things that nature has to offer and that they can find if they just go outside and look hard enough for it. Here's a beautiful dragonfly nymph. One of the biggest I had ever found. This guy was easily over 2 inches long. It probably was ready to molt and become an adult within a day or so after we caught it. And you can see that it's right in here is where its wings are forming underneath there. And we could really see how it was coming along. It was just a gorgeous find. And it was great that we had kids that got to find that. It really, really blows their minds. And, you know, hopefully it gets them, you know, involved in a lifelong love for nature. Last year I was lucky. We found this little guy as well on one of our trips, another small painted turtle. And this little guy was hanging out one day. We have one of our programs is a program we have called Predator Prey. And that's kind of like a giant game of tag where kids, where we talk about food webs and the food chain and how the animals at the top clearly feed on the ones at the bottom. And the kids break off into groups and they play tag. And as one kid is tagged, they bring kids into that food group, and it kind of ends up out of balance. We show the kids, you know, how it all works. And during one of these events, I had a group of kids and we were running around this one area where we were hiding out the most. And as we were leaving, I spotted this fawn here, and it had been there the entire time. I had a group of kids that had been in this spot for maybe 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, hiding out here along with other kids that were moving in and out. And this poor fella, he didn't move an inch, just stayed curled up and hiding the entire time. The kids were real lucky to get a chance to see that. Another great thing that we have on our property is a community garden. We have probably a dozen or so beds inside. I'm not sure exactly how many we have. If Stacy wants to correct me on that, that's fine. But it gives people in our community, members and other group and people outside who, if they don't have a place to garden on their own, they can come out and they can rent a spot from us. And it gives them a chance to get in, and it gives people an opportunity to work together, you know, share tips, trade vegetables, whatever they want to do. And it's a lovely garden. It's a great thing to have. We even take the kids in there when we have small enough groups so they can have a look at it also. And that's they always appreciate getting to do that. There's always somebody that's willing to share a few of their veggies with us. Here you see Diane Smith, our lead educator, and she's getting the kids some peas. And a lot of the kids that were there had never had peas straight from the pod, so that was a real treat for them that day. Yes, the front is also a pollinator garden. We have all kinds of pollinating plants put in, and that helps our local bees, which is great. We do have a hive, not one that we take care of, but there is a tree, and it's at the south end of our property that has a knot with a hole in it. And there is a hive of bees that live in there, honeybees. And I was checking out the property on Saturday, and they were quite active. They were everywhere. I was very happy to see that they had returned and were active again. Our property also has, this is a healing garden that was put together by a group of special needs kids and young adults. There's a group out of Doylestown who does a lot of horticultural therapy programs with special needs people. And they put together this wonderful healing garden for everyone to enjoy. They come and they take care of it. They provided a lot of the, you know, they do all the work there. There's all kinds of plants and vegetables that they grow, and it gives them a chance to be productive and to get out and enjoy nature themselves. And anybody's welcome to join it or to visit it. So you can walk by, you can go in and just sit, and it's just a lovely, quiet, sunny place to sit and enjoy some time. We have a beautiful large meadow on the south end of our property. We call it our Bluebird Meadow. It is just a wonderful place to walk and explore. We have trails that are cut all through it, kind of in a maze-like pattern. And it's peppered with bluebird nest boxes, which are just very active right now. There we go, Some of our nearby bluebirds hanging out. And this is also a great place too, again, back to education. This is a really wonderful place in the summertime. Once all the flowers are going, the whole meadow is just alive. There's so much going on in there. We have so many different animals that live in there, between the various birds. We also have rabbits, fox live in here. The deer are constantly moving through. We've even had coyotes. They hang out in the southern end of the field is where I've seen the most evidence of coyotes, but they're there as well. But in the wintertime especially, the fox are very active. It's fun to go out and follow their tracks, or even get a chance to happen upon one. In the summer when everything is flowered, the insect life is just amazing. We bring a lot of children out here with catching nets to see what kind of insects we can find. We can spend a whole morning just, from around just hours, just sweeping it and finding things. And some of the things we find are just amazing. In the evenings, in June and July, you never see so many fireflies. The fireflies are just, it's stunning how many you can see here. It's a real wonderful spot. And here we are, back to where we started in our drive, and heading out. Thank you for spending time with us today and going on this virtual field trip with us. I'd like to thank one of my coworkers, Marissa Jacobs, who a lot of these photographs are all hers. She is a fantastic photographer, our staff photographer, and I wanted to thank her for some of these photos.
Robert, thank you so much. And Stacy, thank you for sharing Honey Hollow with us today. Before we let them go, I wonder if anyone has any questions either about the property itself, the history of it, the Audubon chapter, or any of the wildlife that you saw today.
Is it open now?
Yep, go ahead.
We're just asking, is it open?
Oh yes, our trails are open now. They're big. We have enough space where people can go and practice social distancing while getting outside. Almost every day I go out. I try and get out as often as I can. I go in a couple days a week to take care of some of the animals we have at the visitor center, and just to get out as well. And there's almost always cars in the parking lot. So it's been, and I've talked with several people from the community who have been on the trails, and they're just real thankful that we've stayed open, because it's given them and their families a place to go when they're, when they're stuck inside.
Okay.
Is the visitor center open?
The visitor center is not open. It is closed for the time being.
Somebody had put into the chat box about invasive species as well, about how do we try and control them. Anyone who does anything with property knows this is a constant battle that I feel like you can never possibly win. Right now, we don't have a lot of staff. So we're a very small staff, and we don't necessarily have a lot of time to spend on that project. So we mostly rely on volunteers to come in and work in certain areas, especially close to the education center. But the majority of the property, we're not able to really do a lot with controlling the invasives. It's that long-term plan that will hopefully happen someday.
And we do. We have a lot of great volunteers that do come out to help out with that. We have two or three steady volunteers that help out almost on a weekly basis. Sometimes several times a week they come out and they help out with things. But we also do outreach with different schools. A lot of schools and moving forward, their students need to have some kind of community service hours or something along those lines. So we do have kids from local schools come in, and they volunteer time to help remove things like the multiflora rose and different invasive plants that we do have on the property. And that's been a huge help. We rely a lot on volunteers. Like Stacy said, we are a small staff. There's just 4 of us. So a lot of our work, we've got very generous members and community people in the community that we're very thankful to them for coming out as much as they do to help out.
Stacy, Robert, there's a question about whether you have postings for eBird at the site itself.
Yes, we do. And I think Diane Smith actually answered that. Diane Smith is actually our Director of Education. She's on the call today. So she's been answering some of the questions as well. But she does, we lead bird walks a couple of times a month, and she always posts to eBird.
Diane, if you want to unmute yourself, the question about whether you could ID the frog from the tadpole was interesting. And I'm not sure everybody saw that in the chat box. Do you want to talk a little bit about the photo that Robert had shown about with the froglet? I guess.
The tadpoles do look different depending on the species. The one that he showed, which was kind of an olive green with spots, is typical of either a green frog or a bullfrog. And both as tadpoles and as adults, they're quite similar. Those of you that know frogs know that the green frogs have two dorsolateral ridges going back from their eyes towards their back of their legs that distinguishes it from the bullfrog. But their tadpoles are quite similar. But for example, a toad tadpole is very black, very small. And so when you see those little tiny black tadpoles, you can be guaranteed that those are American toads. Pickerel frogs are more yellowish in their coloration and have more of a keel-shaped tail when they have a tail. So yeah, you can pretty much tell the difference. Like I said, the green frog and the bullfrog are tough to distinguish, but the other ones are pretty easy to tell apart.
Yeah, and the pickerel frog, they're a little, they don't have as many spots as the others do. So they are, like you said, they're,
Just ask.
I have a question. Are you related to the Bucks County Birders?
We are not. They're a separate group, although we often do a lot of partnership with them. They're a great organization. A couple of our board members are really active members with them as well. So although we're separate organizations, we partner a lot.
Okay.
Stacy, Robert, Diane, the programs that you mentioned, because it seems like there's just a broad range of programs for kids and adults that made me want to come to both. Where would people find information about those?
The best place is our website, which is BCAS for Bucks County Audubon Society .org. We've got a great website, calendar of events. Once we open up again, hopefully we'll get even more people out, but we're trying to do a lot of our events virtually as well. Robert does a Monday and Fridays at 1 o'clock, a live Zoom time with some different animals. We did crayfish on Monday. Last week we were doing salamanders. So lots of fun stuff going on there. And we're hoping to do more of that. We have a wonderful pollinator program coming up on Saturday at 2 o'clock. That's a virtual one as well. Talking about the Great Sunflower Citizen Science program that we're going to start doing. So it should be a lot of fun as well. So you can find that information on our website and register. And it's a Zoom just like this, and it should be fun.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you both. And Diane, thank you for providing us with this today. I mean, this was just a fantastic field trip, and I can't wait to see you guys in person, hopefully soon. So thanks, many thanks to Robert and Stacy and Diane from County Audubon Society. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. Recording will be posted in a day or so, and I hope you'll join us next week where we're joined by Jeannie Ortiz, our Senior Program Manager for Landscape Conservation, and Katie Laux, our Forestry Health Associate. They're both incredible women, and they'll be giving you a migratory field trip along the Kittatinny Ridge. You'll join us for that. You're getting applause from the chat boxes, Stacy and Ron. All right. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I hope to see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, find us on Facebook.
And thank you, Kelly, very much for doing this. It was fun.
Oh, you're welcome. It's our pleasure.
There were a lot of people.